All right, so are you ready to dive into Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy? We're going to get to the core of why his ideas still resonate today. We've got some really fascinating excerpts from The Birth of Tragedy itself, and to give us some context, we'll be pulling from Smith's introduction, too.
Hmm.
It does a great job of tracing the book's impact, I think.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to unpack this one together.
It really will. So Nietzsche starts with this really powerful idea, the idea that tragedy is born from this clash between two opposing forces, the Dionysian and the Apollonian. And these aren't just abstract concepts for him, they were these fundamental energies that are shaping our experiences even today. Have you ever felt pulled in two completely different directions? Like you have these two opposite sides of your personality?
It's a duality for sure, and it's something that really fascinated Nietzsche. To grasp it, it helps to think about less like a philosophical debate and more like experiencing a really intense piece of music. That's the kind of raw, visceral energy that Nietzsche associated with the Dionysian. That primal ecstatic force,
Oh,
the
God.
energy of like a wild dance, a collective ritual. It's about surrendering to something bigger than yourself, something chaotic, even a little dangerous. It's that feeling of being so swept up in the moment that you completely lose yourself.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So then the opposite, the Apollonian, would be?
Think about like the beautifully ordered columns of a Greek temple. Apollo represents order, reason, and clarity. It's that force that seeks to impose form on chaos, to make sense of the world through logic and reason.
Huh.
It's what allows us to analyze, to categorize, to create art that reflects a sense of balance and harmony.
So what does it mean to say that tragedy is born from these two seemingly opposite forces? How does that actually play out?
Well, Nietzsche believed that the most powerful tragedies, the ones that truly move us, happen when these two forces are in tension, when they're playing off of each other.
Oh, okay.
So they create this kind of electricity, right? And here's where things get really interesting. For both Nietzsche and his philosophical heavyweight influencer, Schopenhauer music was the key to unlocking the Dionysian.
Wait, Schopenhauer was a huge influence on Nietzsche? What's the connection there?
Oh, absolutely. Schopenhauer was a major influence. And he was also fascinated by this idea that music could give us this direct experience of what he called the will, this primal force that drives all of existence. And remember, we're talking about the 19th century here, when these ideas were pretty revolutionary.
So music for both of them wasn't just something nice to listen to. It was this profound experience that connected you to something much deeper. And that brings us to Wagner. I know Nietzsche was completely captivated by Wagner's operas, particularly Tristan and Isolde.
Absolutely. Imagine being at the premiere of Tristan and Isolde, this groundbreaking opera that just pushed the boundaries of traditional form and was full of these intense emotions and dissonance. Nietzsche saw Wagner as this radical figure who was tapping into that raw Dionysian energy and using it to shatter the conventions of his time. It's like he was holding a mirror up to society and forcing people to confront those darker, more chaotic aspects of themselves. So it's about way more than just enjoying a night at the opera. Exactly. It's about the power of art to confront us with the raw, untamed parts of ourselves and how cultures grapple with the tragic, the ugly, the irrational aspects of human existence, the stuff we often try to ignore.
All right, so we've got these two powerful forces, the Dionysian and the Apollonian, this incredible tension that Nietzsche saw as the heart of tragedy. But how did this actually play out on stage in ancient Greece? Like if we were transported back to the theater, what would we see and hear?
Well, imagine sitting in an ancient amphitheater, just the energy buzzing all around you. The play begins, and you've got these actors on stage speaking in these beautifully measured versus pure Apollonian form,
Yeah.
but then you got the chorus.
Right, the chorus. They weren't just like background singers. They were like this collective voice of the people.
Exactly. The chorus was vital. They embodied that raw emotional power of the Dionysian. Imagine them chanting, moving, rhythmically reacting to the unfolding drama. They were just watching the story. They were experiencing it, drawing the audience into this immersive, almost trance-like experience.
It's like they were giving voice to those deep primal emotions that Apollonian dialogue was trying to contain.
Yes, and don't forget the power of myth itself. Greek tragedies weren't just these fictional stories. They were deeply intertwined with the myths and beliefs that shaped Greek culture.
Right.
And Smith's introduction really emphasizes this, highlighting how those myths were a way for the Greeks to grapple with these big questions of life and death, fate and free will, all the things that could easily overwhelm us if we didn't have ways to process them.
So those tragic myths provided like the raw Dionysian material, and then the Apollonian structure of the plays gave the Greeks a way to kind of engage with those really powerful, often unsettling stories. Which makes me think about how Nietzsche saw this connection between art culture and even psychology.
Absolutely. He was way ahead of his time in recognizing how these things are all interwoven. Greek tragedy for him was a perfect example of a culture using art to process its deepest fears and anxieties in a way that was both cathartic and meaningful.
But then there's Euripides. Nietzsche wasn't exactly his biggest fan, right? Something about Euripides being too reasonable.
You've hit the nail on the head. Nietzsche saw Euripides as this turning point, a shift away from the power of the Dionysian. He felt that Euripides' plays became too focused on psychological realism, on dialogue and debate, instead of tapping into that primal mythic energy. Euripides for Nietzsche really signaled the rise of a more cerebral, less emotionally engaged approach to tragedy.
So it's like tragedy lost its bite, its ability to shake us to our core and make us confront those uncomfortable truths about ourselves and the world.
Exactly. And for Nietzsche, this wasn't just a matter of artistic taste. He was concerned that it reflected a broader cultural shift, a move away from confronting those darker, less rational aspects of existence. He worried that we were becoming too comfortable, too obsessed with reason and order, at the expense of the primal creative energy of the Dionysian.
Which leads us to the big question. Does any of this ancient Greek drama stuff actually matter to us today? I mean, it does feel pretty relevant when you put it like that. And Nietzsche was worried we were heading in that direction even back then.
Yeah, he was. He actually drew a parallel between modern culture and the Alexandrian age.
See, Alexandrian age, I mean like the library at Alexandria.
Exactly.
Those guys were all about collecting and categorizing scrolls, right? Not exactly known for their, wild Dionysian's energy.
Exactly. That's the comparison Nietzsche was making. He worried that we were becoming so obsessed with accumulating information, with analyzing and dissecting the past, that we were losing touch with that primal creative force that fuels truly vital living culture. Think about it. Are we so busy scrolling through information today that we're missing out on actually experiencing things, on really engaging with the world and all its messiness and complexity?
It's like we've become those scholars in the Library of Alexandria, surrounded by knowledge, but maybe not really knowing what to do with it. I mean, how many times have you scrolled through, endless articles or social media posts, and you feel like you're taking in all this information, but not really connecting with any of it on a deeper level?
That's exactly the kind of numbing effect Nietzsche was concerned about. It's easy to confuse accumulating information with gaining wisdom. But for him, true wisdom came from engaging with the full spectrum of human experience, from grappling with those big questions about life, death, meaning, and yes, even tragedy.
So how do we do that? How do we break free from this kind of Alexandrian trap? Nietzsche wouldn't just leave us hanging, would he?
He wouldn't. He wants us to be active participants in our own lives and in shaping the culture around us. The Birth of Tragedy is a call to examine the stories we tell ourselves, the art and music that move us or don't move us. It's about asking ourselves tough questions. Are we letting ourselves be challenged, even disturbed by art? Or are we just passively consuming it? Are we really grappling with the world, or are we just trying to analyze it into submission?
And that reminds me of that line you brought up earlier about music being a direct line to the Dionysian. For Nietzsche, it wasn't just about listening to a nice melody, it was about letting yourself be swept away by something bigger than yourself.
Yes. And that applies to all forms of art. It's about opening ourselves up to experiences that shake us out of our comfort zones, that force us to confront the full spectrum of human experience, the joy, the pain, the beauty, and yes, even the tragedy.
So to wrap things up, Nietzsche's The Birth of Tragedy isn't just some dusty old philosophical text. It's an invitation to engage with the world in a more present, meaningful way. It's about finding that balance between the Apollonian and the Dionysian, not just in art, but in our own lives.
Yeah, and I think for you as someone who is clearly engaged in these questions, Nietzsche's challenge is to think about where you find that sense of Dionysian energy in your own life. What are the experiences that make you feel truly alive, that shake you out of your comfort zone and help you see the world with fresh eyes? Those are the experiences Nietzsche would encourage you to seek out and cultivate.
It's like he's urging us to step out of the audience and onto the stage of our own lives to become active participants in this unfolding drama of existence. It's a powerful image and one that I think we can all take something from. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the birth of tragedy, that's something I'll be pondering, and I hope you will too.